those delusions hidden in lotus threads. Have you found them? I did. Dirty underwear. Do you understand? Does anyone have a question or concern from out of the practice or about returning home? Ursula?
Yes, I can say that I also found threads from the lotus, and it's not so. It feels not so good to see how I was unhumble and made me higher than other persons. It's not so. There are other feelings I don't like more. But I see it, and I will try when I go back to the daily life to remember this and be aware of this situation.
That is true humility. To be aware that you do such things. That is humility. Yeah.
Another, what I also found important from your words, to teach others. This night, when I couldn't sleep, I thought about how it would be to guide, and I said no, Zen text I could never interpret. Like never, I won't study them in this kind. And I found it important what you say, that I can guide in my own way how I live and how I be with others. In my own way, I can not show. I can show them the way, but I can't to be as I am.
Yes.
I think it's my way to teach. It's very low, but I think it's enough for me.
There's no low or high here. Huh? As a matter of fact, Zen masters often give lectures on Zen texts. They may spend a couple of years, maybe a couple times a week, for a couple of years to go through one text, like the Gateless Barrier. The Blue Cliff record is quite long, huh? The record of Rinzai, so on and so forth. But that's not the only way to teach Zen. That's a very formal way that developed partly out of Chinese culture. The importance of being able to read and understand and then interpret a text. This is very basic to the Chinese mind. Huh? Not just Buddhism, but Confucianism as well, Taoism even. Huh? But that's not necessary. It can become very, very top-heavy, very, very complicated. For example, the Blue Cliff record basically has a koan, a case, but often before it there's what's called a pointer, or kind of an introduction, although it's often more confusing than introducing, challenging. Then there's the koan, then there are poetic comments, then there are poetic comments on the poetic comments, and then there is a commentary. So it may go on for 5 or more pages. And as a koan, even as a koan in practice, that may be 5, there may be 5 koans, so to speak, within that one case. You see how complex it is? Well, now the Zen masters in Japan do their commentary on that commentary. You follow? It's not necessary. It's not necessary. As a Chinese, Japanese cultural tradition, in Korea as well. It's part of it's Yeah, if you look at theology, Christian theology in the West, it's not the same, but it's not completely different either. But you don't need to do that. You don't need to become a Zen scholar. Pull it out of yourself. That will do. That will do. Pull it out of the other. That will do. That will do. If it's not there, it's not in the text. Yeah, you do what you do as an artist,
Yes.
as a friend, as a companion. That's
An artist, I can do.
that's more than enough, Ursula. Crystal.
When you speak about extending the samadhi throughout the day, is it more kind of ongoing presence, being present with what is there in the present moment? Or is it more, do you mean to continue the certain practice I do on my cushion? I mean, in a way, it's maybe there's no difference, but
Yeah, well, let's just say maybe there is a difference in attitude. To be able to sit in concentrated zazen without any of the concerns of the world. This is really a wonderful spiritual luxury, as we have just done 4 days, to spend many hours every day just focused on this. You don't have to check your cell phone. You don't have to do your work. You don't even have to interact with others. It's wonderful. Then to take that and go into the world, obviously it's not the same thing. You have to pay attention. Red light, green light. Who is the next person you're going to meet? What needs to be said? Preparation. Yes. All of that is there and important. But it can also come naturally from out of the practice, can it? You know this, right? In your own work. There are at least times when you realize it just comes. And you sit down with the patient, the person that is there for you, and you're just fully there. You have this great knowledge, intellectual and otherwise, knowledge as a therapist. And all that is of value when you're working with someone, isn't it? But if you have it out there, you can't really see the person, can you? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It has to become so much a part of you that, in effect, it disappears. And yet, when it's needed, it's there. When the person says something, all of a sudden. If you're not experienced, what often happens is you bring all that stuff with you, and then as soon as the person enters the room, before they've even spoken, oh yes, this looks like that kind of neurosis I read in the book. Remember that chapter? You're already seeing them, but you're not. So, in a sense, this is a kind of samadhi as well. To be there fully for the other, without expectation, without bringing anything with you. You know what I mean, don't you? Yeah. Well, that's a very highly trained kind of a samadhi. It's very specific, though. It's very specific. The point is, at the bottom, that continues throughout the day. When you go to the bathroom, when you take a break. Yes, there's a release of that tension, but where does it go? You follow? This does what needs to be done. And when nothing needs to be done, take a break. Enjoy yourself. And then come back. You're not beginning again. It just continues. To put it very bluntly, Christoph, from the outside, it seems impossible. Samadhi, let alone continuous. Ooh, boy. I think I did 5 minutes in this retreat. Continuous. But once you do, just throw away the value judgments, the comparisons, huh? Oh, I'll never be able to do. Look, the guy next to me was sitting, didn't move at all. It must have been a perfect samadhi. Meanwhile, he was probably thinking, wow, that guy's really looking good. You know what can go on in the mind. But how to say it? What looked impossible, can't even get my mind around it, huh? From the outside, once you fall into it, you just forget it. Forget it. Can I do it? Can I not? Is it possible? Is it impossible? Well, if you're still thinking about that, it is impossible. And you're making it so. Throw that all away and just dive in without knowing a thing. We don't even need a manual here. Huh? You do, as a therapist. You understand? There's a place for that. And there's a place for the Zen records as well. They're not useless. But to throw ourselves into this, you don't need a manual. You don't need a manual. And when you do really throw yourself into it, you realize you can't get out of it. You understand? You can't get out of it. Jump, leap, laugh, have a beer, doesn't make any difference. Fall asleep, deep sleep. Is it gone or not? Inquire there. Inquire there. The moment you wake up, is it there or not? You see? In the beginning, it seems like a matter of great will and effort, huh? And in a way, it is, because our mind is so distracted. So yes, we do have a discipline. That's what we've been doing here for 4 days, right? Bringing the mind back and, in a sense, consciously entering samadhi. Is that real samadhi? Well, it's a way. It is a way. Especially with the breath. It's very helpful. But the point is not to carry that around all the time. You know what I mean? Oh, I can't do anything too radical because I might upset my samadhi. This is not samadhi, you see? You get to the point where throw yourself into it, however wild and crazy. This cannot be lost. So, yes, you're right. As a process, pay attention. Bring the mind back again and again. Have a regular practice. Live a life in accord with this practice. Yes. But give yourself so fully that you can't get out of it. You can't get out of it. Then there's a new beginning. There's a practice from there. How do you practice from there? Huh? Okay?
Yeah.
Does that help?
Yes. Thank you.
Just as a question, you don't need to say your name. How many people are therapists, psychotherapists, and something like that in that domain? Less than last time, but still. Cyrus.
It's obvious that being deluded or having been deluded about things in the past, but going back into the world, although I will be confronted by situations that I have created, and I understand to meet it, to just meet it square on, and I understand compromise, and I understand sometimes you have to bend with the wind. And, could you just say something about that? Because I know state, and I know it can be a bit rough to be there. This is a cruise, even with pain, but the traffic, that is lost. So could you say something about the living with, I suppose it's in a sense, or I have done things and they're still going to come to me.
Let them come. Let them come. I remember in my own practice for years, I was trying to get away from that stuff so that I could do what I thought was the real practice. But eventually it kind of comes back and bites you in the butt, as we say. You realize you can't ignore those things. We don't have to create all kinds of problems and analyze every past experience we had. But sometimes, when you're sitting or when you're engaged in daily affairs, something comes up and gets in the way, doesn't it? For me, for example, seeing someone and having this real urge to just be with them, open for them, but realize that sometimes things from the past come up, and I find myself not encountering the person in front of me, but encountering someone that they remind me of, for example. It's very common, huh? But when you're aware of this, it's painful, because you want to be with that person genuinely, not your image, not what you're bringing with it, because then what happens? You start responding to what's going on in your own memory bank, right? This is not the way to commune with someone, is it? So these are opportunities that you see. Sometimes it's not comfortable, as you said, to see, I had some pride. I put myself above others. It's not a pleasant thing to see, but it's necessary. It's necessary. And then you don't have to then judge yourself about that. But to clearly see it, really see it, it's almost gone by then. It's almost gone. The point is, will it come back in another guise, in another form? If it does, you need to be aware of that. See, are you feeding it, Cyrus? Of course, you don't consciously want to, but are you feeding those mechanisms? In the depth of a real insight or awakening, they often disappear completely. They're gone, not even a shadow. This may go on for hours, days, even weeks or months. But with most people, some of that stuff comes back. A certain encounter, a certain person, a certain event, a certain memory, a certain hope. And some of those wheels start turning again. Yeah. That's where the practice really must be refined. Remember what the second day of the Dharma talks? Intellectual, it's not quite accurate, but fixed views can break off just like that in an instant. It's not that way. I pictured it that way. It's not that way at all. Gone, done. I can't fall into that trap again because I've seen through it. It's gone. But other delusions, emotional, again, this is a general term, deeply held feelings and emotions, sometimes they need to be worked through patiently, humbly, over time, gradually, as that saying made clear. So to be able to discern, gone, it's gone. I don't even have to think about it anymore. Good. Other stuff, if I'm honest, if I'm humble with myself, that stuff still comes up. I have This is where I need to apply myself. So you do holotropic, do I say that right?
One word, holotropic.
Holotropic. Well, that's just British and American. Now, wait a minute. Two languages separated by a common language. Huh? Holotropic, eh? Jolly good. Breathing, but you're also a taxi driver, right? So you must know from the inside what it's like to do that kind of breathing with people. We have some time later today. I'd like to learn about that. Huh? I hope you can show me. Huh? But then, in the evenings you go off and drive a taxi in Berlin. Who are you going to pick up? What are they going to want? So you have to be completely open, like in Zazen. You also have to be guarded, don't you?
Most definitely.
And is there any contradiction there?
No contradiction.
If you make it into one, there is. But if you simply do what needs to be done, But yeah, that takes time, that takes patience. It doesn't just happen like that. I know you read the books about boom, everything, never have a doubt again. Huh? Well, humbly keep your eye open. Don't be afraid to test it. See, for years I was afraid to really test it. I thought I was, but I didn't really want to test it because I wanted to just do this thing and get it done, right? Meanwhile, the psychological crap that had grown in me, as it does with everyone, would just stay there. It stayed there. Some of it can get worked through, I would say, in sustained zazen. Some of that stuff, it just falls away and you see it. I don't need to play that game anymore. I don't need to follow that delusion anymore. It's clear. But other stuff may need to be worked on, worked through. Maybe with a friend or with a therapist. Yes. To see that humbly. But first and foremost, to open up to it, to be open to it. You don't need to judge it. You don't need to condemn yourself or praise yourself. See it for what it is. What does it have to say? What does it have to say? Now I go towards rather than get away from those problems. You follow? Because here's where I can really learn and be of benefit. Not by running away and escaping. No, to go towards the problems. Does that help, Cyrus?
Very, very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
It has an element of, I know what you just said about moving towards. I used to drive and just drive people. Now I look, can I help? Where can I help? But not, or talking to somebody, and it's more difficult with kind of psychological things, but not pouring my ideas on them, but rather...
Taxi drivers can do that, can't they? We've all had one of those. Remember the one in Budapest? Huh? I couldn't understand a word he said, but I didn't need to. He was pouring himself pretty heavy. But I'm sure you're not one of those.
It wasn't me. So was he.
Well, thank you, Cyrus. We have about 2 minutes left. Any remaining problems?
Just perhaps it's no. Sorry, got to know some Tibetan people and some Theravada people, and I think they have very exact rules, yes, and how they do their practice and so on, and they have to know many things about the sutras and And what we do, what you say seems very clear without all these rules. Yes, is it? And I don't know what to think about this.
You don't have to think about it at all. Rules and rituals have their place. We have them here. We have rules and rituals. We have rules and okay, we're pretty loose with them, I admit. We're pretty loose, but that's no better than the rules and the rituals of some schools are very, very, I would say even Soto Zen, at least the present incarnation in the 20th, 21st century, so-called Soto Zen of Japan. Huh? It's very formal, very ritualistic. Huh? And it comes out of certain reasons, certain developments. Rinzai Zen is not really free of rituals. They have them. They have dogma. They have everything that any other religion has as an institution. It's inevitable. But that living spirit, we don't want to simplify it. Don't be naive. D.T. Suzuki made that mistake 60, 70 years ago. Huh? Zen is the living spirit of any religion, not the rituals and the forms, but it's the living spirit. Well, okay, but why call it Zen? Maybe there's a little bit of being above the rest there. Oh.
What mistake?
One of D.T. Suzuki was a great figure, a lay Zen man who introduced Zen to the world, to the West. But one of the more serious mistakes is in meeting many Westerners for decades and decades. He lived to be almost 97 years old, and he started young. He met many people all over the world, and he came to certain conclusions which maybe were a bit premature. But in trying to introduce Zen to the West after the Second World War in the 50s, he would sometimes write that basically Zen is whenever there is something alive and vital, not just rituals and dead memorizing and things like that, formulas. Whenever a religion, a spiritual tradition is alive and vital and breathing, Zen is there. This is a day. You see? What? Why call it Zen? So, do you understand?
Yes, I understand.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Call it taxi driving, as far as I'm concerned. Yes.
Maybe
Logically.
It is the seventh step of the eighth path. It means
Right, meditation.
meditation.
Mhm.
That's all. I think so. If you use that word.
Okay, but is Zen meditation?
As Shan or as
Mhm.
Dana,
Mhm.
then you could say such a word.
Yes, but is Zen simply meditation?
In the
Etymologically, yes, but actually that's one of the questions
In
of Zen history.
in
Why
the-
is it called the Zen school?
in the
Nobody knows.
In the experience, it is.
In the experiences, no it's not. No it's not. No it's not. It has nothing to do with sitting.
No.
Well, look at the sixth patriarch. You know the sixth patriarch of Chinese Zen?
Yes.
How much Zazen did he do before he was awakened, according to the legend? How much?
10 years.
No, he never sat. There's no record of him sitting. He wasn't even a monk, right? It's a legend. It's a legend, but it's a good one. They're trying to say something. He couldn't read or write, and he never sat in formal meditation. Remember, he was sent to work in the kitchen because he was a low-level person. He wasn't worthy to sit with the monks, so he worked in the kitchen. After 6 months, he became the sixth patriarch. Zen is meditation?
it's
Etymologically, yes. But that's one of the interesting things of Zen. If there's one thing that's clear, it's not limited to the sitting posture. It's not just sitting. It's not just meditating a certain state. So why call it the Zen school? Interesting. Scholars haven't figured that one out yet. I'm not making light of meditation. I'm saying that meditation must be thorough. It doesn't end in this posture. You follow? So etymologically, you're quite right. But that in itself is a strange thing about the school. They often call it the school of the Buddha mind. Buddha means awakened, the awakened mind, not the Zen school, but not the teachings or the rituals, but the mind itself, the Buddha mind, literally Buddha, awakened mind, the Buddha mind. That's how the Zen school prefers to speak of itself.
Yamada Roshi often use the pictures of different ways, and they cross at one point, and this is the different religions. They cross at one point, the point of the experience. For example, this dhyana.
But is it dhyana?
Or a samadhi
Or samadhi? I wouldn't say it. I would never reduce Christianity to samadhi or dhyana. No. That does not do justice to it. No. Why do you need to reduce Christianity to samadhi or dhyana?
It is like just words.
I would urge you to consider Christianity as what it is, on its own grounds. On its own grounds. Grace, not samadhi, not jhana, but grace. We've run over by 7 minutes, so I guess we won't be getting enlightened at this retreat. My apologies. We have one more period of zazen, I believe. Two more periods. Okay, well in that case, if anyone's not enlightened, you're in serious trouble. Almost 2 periods, because I went over. My apologies. Thank you for your comments, all of you, and for listening so intently. Let us continue on together to the end.